Hey there, Beatles fans, and welcome back to the Beatles Wings, or welcome to the Beatles Wings. Today we're going to talk about Beatle books. So whether you're a seasoned Beatle maniac, or just starting to explore the fascinating world of John, Paul, George, and Ringo, diving into the Beatles literature is a must. But with countless books out there, how do you choose the right one? Today we're going to talk about why you should be picky and choosy when selecting Beatles books to read. We'll guide you on how to weed out the biased narratives and find true gems that offer a balanced and insightful look at the Fab Four. From authorized biographies and personal memoirs to critical analysis and sensational exposés, Beatles books come in all shapes and sizes. But here's the catch. Not all of them tell you the whole story. Some books are heavily influenced by the book's author's personal bias, the band's own narratives, or the desire to sensationalize. This can lead to a skewed and incomplete understanding of the Beatles' incredible journey. So how do you know which one to trust? First, consider the author's background and relationship with the Beatles. Are they an insider with potential bias or an objective historian? Next, let's look at the sources they used. Are they reliable on first-hand accounts and credible documentation? Or are they leading on rumors and hearsay? And don't forget to check out the reviews from both critics and fellow fans to get a sense of the book's reception. By being a discerning reader, you can avoid books that simply regurgitate the band's official line or those who aim to shock more than inform. Instead, you'll discover works that offer a nuanced and thorough exploration of the Beatles' lives and music. Stick around as we delve deeper into specific titles and help you build a Beatles library that's worth its weight in vinyl. Narrative-driven Beatles books. Myths, biases, and falsehoods. The Beatles' story is rich with myth and legend, some of which have been perpetrated by the band members themselves, while others have been crafted by biographers with their own biases. Here are some key points to understand about how these narratives can sometimes be misleading or false. Let's talk about the three most used narrative-driven and biases. 1. Influence of management or self-created myths by the Beatles themselves. 2. Self-censorship and selective storytelling. And 3. Biographical biases and untrue stories. Influence of management and self-created myths by the Beatles themselves. Books narrated or heavily influenced by the Beatles themselves often serve to present their own perspective and sometimes protect their image. These works typically offer valuable insights but may omit or gloss over more controversial aspects. And let's talk about an author that definitely had this in 1968, Hunter Davies. Hunter Davies, the authorized biographer of the Beatles, wrote The Beatles, the Authorized Biography, which was first published in 1968. While the book is a significant work due to its authorized status and unprecedented access Davies had to the band, it has been critiqued for presenting a narrative heavily influenced by the Beatles and their management. So let's talk about the contents of Davies' book. It provides a comprehensive account of the Beatles' rise to fame, their music, and their personal lives. It includes interviews with the band members, their families, and associates. Davies had unparalleled access to the Beatles during their peak years, spending time with them in the studio, on tour, and in their homes. This access allowed him to capture many personal stories and behind-the-scenes details. As an authorized biography, the book had to align with the Beatles and their management's approval. This meant that potentially controversial or negative aspects of their lives and careers were likely downplayed or omitted altogether. Davies himself has acknowledged that he left out certain details at the band's request, such as drug use and more salacious aspects of their personal lives. This self-censorship was intended to protect the band's public image at the time. Upon the release, the book was well received, praised for its detail and intimate portrayal of the Beatles. It became a bestseller and remains a valuable resource for the Beatles fans and historians. Over the years, critics have pointed out the book's limitations due to its authorized status. It is seen as a sanitized version of the Beatles' story, lacking the full truth about the Beatles' internal dynamics and individual struggles. Davies has released updated editions of the book, incorporating new information and insight as it became available. However, even these editions are seen as constraints by the original authorized framework. So in conclusion, Hunter Davies' The Beatles, the Authorized Biography, is a seminal work that offers a detailed and personal look at the Beatles. However, readers should be aware of its limitations due to the influence of the Beatles and their management on its content, self-censorship, and selective storytelling. Biographers may selectively include or exclude certain events or perspectives to fit a predetermined narrative. Authors who are close to their subjects of their biographies often face accusations of self-censorship, selectively presenting stories that paint their subjects in a favorable light. This can result in a skewed narrative that omits important but less flattering details. This can create an imbalanced view of the Beatles' history. A good example of one of these biographers is Barry Miles. Barry Miles, a prominent biographer and close associate of Paul McCartney, has authored several books about the Beatles, including Many Years From Now, a biography of Paul McCartney, and The Beatles, a diary. His work has sometimes been scrutinized for potentially presenting a biased view of the Beatles, influenced by his close relationship with McCartney and the band's management. Many Years From Now, 1997. The content in this biography of Paul McCartney offers an in-depth look at McCartney's life, particularly focusing on his time with the Beatles. It includes detailed accounts of his contributions to the band, his personal life, and his career post-Beatles. Critics have noted that the book leans towards McCartney's perspective, often highlighting his contributions while sometimes downplaying or omitting the roles of other band members. This is partly because the book was written with McCartney's cooperation and features extensive interviews with him. While the book is praised for its detailed and comprehensive coverage of McCartney's life, some readers and critics have pointed out its potential bias, suggesting that it may not present a fully balanced view of the Beatles' history. Biographical bias and untrue stories. These types of books are often criticized for its bias towards a particular person. This can result in certain members being either vilified or over-glorified. Certain individuals and sources may influence the way stories are told, sometimes leading to the story being portrayed a certain way that is false. Shout by Philip Norman. This biography covers the Beatles' entire career from their early days in Liverpool to their breakup and subsequent solo careers. Norman is often criticized for his strong bias towards John Lennon, portraying him as the primary creative force behind the Beatles, while downplaying the contributions of Paul McCartney and the other members. This book was initially praised for its comprehensive narrative, but has been scrutinized for being overcritical of McCartney and somewhat dismissive of George Harrison and Ringo Starr. Updates. Norman updated Shout in 2003 to address some of the criticisms and include more recent events, but some bias remained evident. So, although all these books are narrative-driven and biased, they still offer valuable insight of the life of the Beatles. But it's beneficial to read these books alongside other biographies to get a more complete picture. Now let's talk about 3 really good books that offer a more balanced look at the Beatles the way they really were. Book number 1. Now let me take you back before the Beatles were international stars. Love Me Do, The Beatles' Progress, a book by Michael Braun that was first published in 1964. It is one of the earliest behind-the-scenes books about the Beatles, documenting their rise to fame during 1963-1964. Braun, an American journalist, had unparalleled access to the Beatles during their breakthrough period, accompanying them on tours and observing their off-stage lives. Braun had close access to the band, allowing him to capture candid moments and unfiltered conversations. This access provided readers with a raw, unvarnished view of the Beatles, unlike the sanitized image presented in the media. The book depicted the Beatles as real people with flaws, egos, and tensions, contrasting sharp to the public persona of charming and wholesome young men. It highlighted their exhaustion, the pressures of fame, and occasional discontent with their situation. Braun's portrayal included moments of cynicism, off-color humor, and less-than-ideal behavior that fans hadn't seen before. This stark contrast to the lovable mop-tops image was jarring for many fans and the media. While the Beatles were known for their cheeky humor, the book depiction added layers of complexity and humanity that were previously hidden. Some fans were delusioned by the more realistic portrayal, feeling it tarnished their pristine image cultivated by their management and media presence. Love Me Do, The Beatles' Progress is significant as it sets a precedent for rock journalism and the way celebrities are portrayed in the media. It offered a template for future music biographies that sought to go beyond the public persona and delve deep into the real lives of musicians. The book received mixed reactions upon release. Some praised it for honesty and depth, while others criticized it for being too negative and potentially damaging to the Beatles' image. Over time, it has gained a reputation as a seminal work in music journalism, appreciated for its candid and unvarnished look at the early days of one of the most iconic bands in history. Love Me Do, The Beatles' Progress by Michael Braun provided a groundbreaking and controversial glimpse into the real lives of the Beatles, challenging their carefully crafted image as lovable and carefree young men. Book number 2, one of the most detailed books out there before the Beatles even became stars. Tune In is the first volume of a comprehensive biographical trilogy on the Beatles by Mark Lewisohn, a renowned Beatles historian. Published in 2013, the book is part of the All These Years series and offers an in-depth exploration of the Beatles' early years. Mark Lewisohn is known for his meticulous research, and Tune In exemplifies this with exhaustive detail. The book spans over 900 pages in its standard edition, with an expanded edition reaching almost 2,000 pages. Tune In covers the period from the Beatles' prehistory in the late 1950s up until the end in 1962. It delves into the personal histories of John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starr, as well as their early interactions and musical influences. The book details the formation of the band, their early struggles, and the significant events that shaped their journey. It covers their time in Hamburg, their evolving lineup, and the crucial role of manager Brian Epstein in their rise. Lewisohn places the Beatles' story within the broader context of post-war Britain, examining the social and cultural influences that impacted the band. This contextual approach provides a richer understanding of how the Beatles' music and image developed. The book aims to debunk several myths and inaccuracies that surround the Beatles' story. Lewisohn's access to previously unavailable sources and vigorous approach to fact-checking contribute to a more accurate historical record. Tune In offers an intimate insight into the personalities and relationships of the band members. It portrays their ambitions, struggles, and the dynamics within the group, providing a humanizing and nuanced portrait. Tune In is widely appraised by critics and Beatles fans alike for its depth, detail, and narrative style. Reviewers lauded Lewisohn's ability to bring new perspective and previously unknown details to light. The book is considered a definitive account of the Beatles' early years, setting a high standard for music biographers. It has become an essential read for anyone interested in the Beatles and the history of popular music. Tune In is the first of 3 volumes, with the subsequent volumes expected to cover the Beatles' peak years and their eventual breakup. Fans and scholars eagerly await the continuation of the series, anticipating further revelations and insights. So, in summary, Tune In by Mark Lewisohn is a meticulously researched and richly detailed account of the Beatles' formative years, offering a comprehensive and nuanced portrait of the Beatles up until the end of 1962. It is celebrated for its depth, accuracy, and contribution to the historical record of one of the most influential bands in music history. Book number 3. If you've read multiple Beatles books and can't decide what's fact or fiction, take a look at this book, The Beatles and the Historians, an analysis of writings about the Fab Four, is a scholarly work by Erin Torkelson Weber, published in 2016. This book provides a comprehensive analysis of the historiography of the Beatles, examining how historians and writers have approached the band's story over the years. Weber's book is unique in that it doesn't just tell a story of the Beatles, instead it analyzes how their story has been told by others. It critically examines the various narratives and interpretations that have emerged about the Beatles since the 1960s. Weber organizes the analysis into thematic categories exploring different aspects of the Beatles' history and how they've been covered by historians. Themes include the band's early years, their cultural impact, their music and creativity, and the dynamics within the group. The book makes extensive use of primary sources, including contemporary newspaper articles, interviews, and memoirs. Weber assesses how these sources have been used or misused by different writers and historians. One of the key focuses is on how perceptions of the Beatles have changed over time. Weber examines how historical, cultural, and social contexts have influenced the way the Beatles' story has been told. The book critiques various biases and inaccuracies that have crept into the Beatles' historiography. Weber addresses how personal biases, commercial interests, and cultural trends have shaped the narrative presented by different authors. Weber compares and contrasts the works of prominent Beatles biographers and historians such as Hunter Davis, Philip Norman, and Mark Lewisohn. These comparative approaches highlight the strengths and weaknesses of different accounts and interpretations. The Beatles and the Historians is praised for its scholarly approach and its contribution to the field of the Beatles study. It is considered an important work for understanding not just the Beatles, but also the practice of writing history itself. The book received positive reviews for its thorough research and insight analysis. Critics and scholars have commended Weber for her objective and critical perspective. While it is an academic work, the book is also accessible to general readers with an interest in the Beatles and their music history. Its clear and engaging writing style makes complex historiography analysis understandable to a wider audience. In summary, The Beatles and the Historians, an analysis of the writings of the Fab Four by Erin Torkelson Webb, is a detailed and scholarly examination of how the Beatles' story has been told by various historians and writers. The book offers a critical analysis of the narratives, biases, and historical contexts that have shaped the understanding of the Beatles over the years. So these are the top 3 books that I would recommend to anybody who loves the Beatles. And there's plenty more out there that I really love too, but these are definitely my top 3. If you'd like to hear more about other books, please let me know. Or if you'd like to hear my top 10 books, let me know in the comments below. So I hope this video gives you a better understanding about how many biographies are written and helps you to narrow down your search for the perfect Beatles book. If you have any questions or would like me to make more videos like this, leave it in the comments below. I also have a Discord called G&G Club that is part of my gaming channel, but will make a dedicated space for the Beatles Wings to discuss Beatles topics if you would like to join. If you do join, please leave a quick note in Talk and Chill saying that you are here for the Beatles Wings, and I'll set up a specific space. And please, if you did enjoy this video, like, subscribe, comment, and share. It does help me so much. Thanks for watching.